Hello! I'm just trying to keep myself centered here. Yesterday it felt like I was all the way over here, and I'm trying to hold to the rough center of things. Just gradual corrections over time. So yesterday I got the voiceover done. It's all recorded. It's all cut down now. So today I'm going to be going through and putting together the master mix for vocals, which I'm looking forward to because I get to do some playing around with some minor effects for the enemy ship to give like a radio or like a remote, over a speaker sound for them. So I'm probably, just going to default to being over the radio. So that lo-fi sound for that. And a slight robotic voice for the robot VO to begin with. But yeah, I'm going to start putting together the master mix for the experience and starting to put the voiceover alongside the ambient beds and have a look at those ambient beds and maybe replacing them with something more suitable, which I'm really excited about. That's today's work. I've also really got to get a chunk of Verbalize done as well because that's fallen by the wayside. I'm worried I'm not going to get that completed by the end of this week. It may not happen. Either way, my notes from Verbalize are going to include the notes from the first read-through that I did very early on, but I've been finding that there's a lot of value in going through the practical exercises as well. We'll see how we go, because I'm not going to get a chance to apply this stuff to the dialogue that I've got written here, but I am finding that going through the practical side of it is really opening me up to what the possibilities are here and the difference it makes to having dialogue in a game. The difference between having something where it's someone just saying something for the sake of saying it versus, oh yeah, that feels real. I feel like someone's saying something there with intent. There's emotional content here. There's a reason why someone would open their mouth, and the idea of always trying to create stakes in a scene. Just little things, like I know what I'm doing as a proof of concept, but even just a single line to create a goal that the second in command has, an emotional state towards this bounty that you're going and getting. I really hate this guy. I've got a score to settle with him. Just stuff like that. So, because it just adds a little bit of spice. So yeah, so that's me. I'm going to be spending most of the afternoon working in Reaper, which I'm looking forward to. The blog post on monetization is up, along with the stand-up video posts that were overdue. So that's all up there now. I still feel like, and it's kind of been, it's been the case for most of what I've been talking through here. I feel like I'm pulling one thread on much bigger things. And of course I am, because it was a syllabus that I put together that was to encompass 16 weeks, which ended up being 20 weeks, which is touching on a whole lot of areas. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to look backwards and think, what have I learned? What could I distill down into useful teachings? And on one hand, I look forward, and I've really got to, let's do a brief tangent on this and then I'll let you go. One of the smartest decisions that I made over the last few years was starting to work with a personal trainer. Not just because it's helped with my fitness and just my general facility with my body, which just feels delicious on a daily basis, especially at the moment. I've talked with folks who turn up for my regular game streams about just the feeling in my core at the moment because I'm working on core mobility. But what that has done on a 6-week schedule, 6 weeks, because I always work with 6 weeks with a program, is I go from a beginner mindset where everything is confusing and everything is chaotic, and I'm adjusting to everything at a mental, at a physical, at a chemical level. A lot of the time I'd be engaging muscles where my body does that thing where when your body's first working out how to properly utilize a muscle, it just kind of flails between states. We've all had that before. And then I would get to a point where I would have facility and I would feel comfortable, and then I'd be starting to hunger for the next challenge. The thing that did, and it continues to do, because I'm getting to that point now where I'm starting to look at, even though the workouts I'm doing kill me, I'm starting to look for what is the next challenge, and I'm looking forward to getting back to my personal trainer and upping the stakes for the next program. But it kept me in an understanding of what that beginner mindset is, because I'd be going through it regularly. And that fed back and continues to feed back into everything I do, to give an awareness of when people are approaching this for the first time. What does it feel like to be a beginner? What does it feel like to be at sea with all of this? And so I recognize that while I am focused. This side of the screen is very specifically the future here. This is this is what we've decided. Off to the right. Because yeah, left to right. No, there's a reason why. There's a reason why I'm doing that. But even though I'm focused on everything that comes next, how does user acquisition work? How do you track the behavior of a user in a session? Let's get down into the weeds of the usability around account linking and what that looks like in terms of a conversation. How do you manage that? How many extra intents go around the happy path of a game in order to make sure that the user is getting a good experience when things go slightly wrong? How do I create landing pages for the skills that I'm developing? Where am I going to keep people's emails for folks who are interested in? I'm starting to think about all of that stuff, and so I feel like, I don't know anything. What have I done for 5 months? And then I turn around, I pivot back from staring into the face of my ignorance, and I think, hang on a minute. There's a lot that I can tell you about how to put together a Reaper render matrix for building a soundscape for dynamic audio in Alexa. I can tell you what you need to do in order to create a remote endpoint for being able to access dynamic audio. I've got a public repository with a Python-based dynamic audio engine, which is simple. It's very simple. I'm not trying to say that, I've solved the world's problems, but I've cracked a lot of nuts here. I can talk about I can talk to you about how to do continuous delivery with Alexa, and how you can employ more robust testing in order to ensure that your basic errors are being detected up front, so that you're not doing development by deploying to Alexa and talking to Alexa every time. There's a lot of stuff that goes down under the skin, and this happens for all of us very quickly. This is why, it's a cliche, but the real joy of teaching is embedding that learning in ourselves. I speak from a perspective of having done 10 years of corporate training. I always found that was the real joy of doing training, that it forces you to think through the fundamentals that you may not otherwise think through yourself. So all of that is a very long-winded way of saying that I'm pulling on a lot of threads here over the last few months, and I feel like I've touched the surface of everything, and there's a lot that's happening going forward, but I'm excited for what's happening in the future. So I don't have all of the answers to monetization, but I'm going to keep learning, because especially with monetization, it's one of the ones that'll pay the bills. So yeah, hopefully that tangent is useful in some way. I mean, a part of that was trying to frame sort of a slightly less self-apologetic tack at looking at imposter syndrome. There's a lot that I don't know. I don't know more than I know, but I'm excited for what happens in the future. And to leave you on one very positive note for today, one of the things, and I've mentioned this to a few folks now, one of the real shifts in mindset that I've had as I'm coming to the end of the project is I love being a voice actor, and I love training. I love keeping that facility and building that acumen, whether it's accents, whether it's being able to approach and interpret text, whether it's building vocal facility and working on resonance, which I've done for years with an awesome vocal coach. But one of the things that you always have to make your peace with is there is an uncertainty around when the work is coming in the door if you are working for other people. And so sometimes that can eat away at your resolve around, well, why am I doing all of this? Like, I am a practitioner, I know I'm a creative, but you kind of feel sometimes if I'm not working in unison, in concert with someone who's creating something, then what are these skills for? And I know it's silly, but that's what happens. That's what happens in the darker moments. You have those thoughts. One of the beautiful transitions that is happening coming out of this project now is I kind of feel like I have two hats. One is basically the developer hat, where I need voice over me to be at the best that I can be on a daily basis to be able to create content now. That's where I am moving forward. And I've always been able to create content in the past, but the issue around that, or the challenge is, if you go and create a podcast, you can't just create a podcast and vomit it out onto the web. You can't go and create an audio drama and just throw it out there. That is a full-time job, pushing that uphill for whoever is responsible for that, to get it noticed. Now I feel like I have a path for myself that makes sense this is why I sharpen the tools. This is why I keep that acumen. It's so that I can make this stuff, because I have this path that I can see that is right for me. And that's not to take away from anyone who makes audio dramas or podcasts. I've worked with some amazing people who do both and create incredible content, and I love being a part of them. But for me, that hasn't been the fit for me. It hasn't quite felt right. And so this is a beautiful foundation for that. Anyway, that was a giant tangent. I've kept you way too long. You have a wonderful day. I hope that life is treating you well. I hope that you are well and safe. And I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. See you then.